What is going on, guys? Welcome in to the Set It Off Network. It is Tuesday, September 10th, day of our Lord 2024. I hope you guys are having a blessed start to your week. I know I am. I'm looking forward to another football Saturday and another jam-packed day of the greatest sport in the world, man. And today's episode is super special to me because my boy Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered is going to be joining us later, talking about the LSU and South Carolina game, a game that's near and dear to my heart. Being here in the state of South Carolina, doing what I do, I hear it a lot from the South Carolina fans. In today's episode, I'm going to give you guys my perspective on how I'm feeling about LSU going into this game, and he's going to give us our perspective on just the general basis of how he's feeling about going into this game. It's going to be a great show. Make sure you guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. All it does is help us out, man, and it just continues to let us do what we do, right? And I appreciate everybody for watching. I thank you guys. So let's go ahead and jump right in and welcome in my boy Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered. Boy, I told you guys we had a special show for you guys today. We got my man Chris Phillips in the house from SEC Unfiltered. If you're not already, you got to be checking him out. He's doing previews on every single game throughout the SEC season. I'm sure he's 3 weeks deep into this thing. He is probably up to here in busyness. So we appreciate his time today, man. What's going on, Chris?
Michael, appreciate you having me, man. Excited to talk about this game. Who'd have thunk just a couple weeks ago that college game day would be making their way, that we would be making our way, that this would be kind of the feature game of week three, but sure enough, it is, man. So again, appreciate you having me. It's been an electric college football season already, and I got a feeling it's about to pick up even more so in these coming weeks.
Yeah, man. And I don't, you're probably like me, man. I'm an adrenaline junkie, dude. When they announce big games, like I don't care if it's LSU, I don't care who's playing. Like living in South Carolina, I've been to tons of South Carolina games. And when that place gets rocking, I don't think LSU fans know from that perspective how underrated Williams Brice Stadium is. It really sucks that the game is at noon. I'm not gonna lie. But I think LSU fans that are going to the game or watching the game on TV even are going to see a different side of South Carolina football when South Carolina is successful. Couldn't you agree?
Yeah, with the 2-0 start for sure. I mean, even if they were 1-1 and lost to Kentucky, I would say the environment would be solid, but definitely I mean, South Carolina's like any other fan base, right? They love a winner, and when things are going well, especially, it gives folks even more motivation to get out to the stadium and be early and be loud and be rowdy. And so I say you'll get the best version of Williams Brice Stadium. I mean, nothing beats a night game there in Columbia, and Sandstorm gets going and the towels get going. And the last time LSU came to Willie B was 2008, and that was a Thursday night game, and that was a raucous environment. So it'll be a great crowd. It'll be electric. Like you said, it's one of the most underrated venues in all of college football, and it's certainly one of the most loyal fan bases in the sport as well. And they'll show up. Listen, there's never been a problem in the history of South Carolina football with the fans showing up and giving it their all. It's just up to South Carolina, the actual team, to deliver. But the atmosphere will be electric, and I think certainly it'll be one fitting of this matchup, college game day being in town, and everything that's riding on this game.
Yeah, I kind of want to kick things off on the LSU side of things and kind of give my takes on the game and how you're feeling about the game. Obviously, that 2008 game, LSU got a little help from the refs, so I'm not going to lie that we're not going to bring that up, though. That's a little sore subject for a lot of the South Carolina fans. But I want to start with this LSU football team and kind of how the script has flipped between them and South Carolina. You thinking maybe preseason, like LSU's coming in this game 2-0, South Carolina could be 1-1, 2-0, obviously, but you come in thinking this game has no chance of being a competitive game preseason, right? Like you're looking at LSU's roster, you're looking at South Carolina with a freshman quarterback, and this game already was scheduled for noon, and the TV makers had no clue. They didn't expect this, we didn't expect this, but it's kind of turned on its head here. But this LSU football team, to me, I think gets a perspective put on them about not being physical. And as an LSU fan, and watching the games very closely, I couldn't disagree more. I think that the whole narrative that LSU can't run the ball is a very false narrative. I think it's more of the fact that they do. Brian Kelly talked about it in his press conference. Like he literally said, we're not just going to run the ball to strong arm somebody and make a like in talk about like we're just going to bully the opponent just to prove a point that we can run the football. Like they're picking and choosing in their run. And I think there's two plays this season. It was the 3rd and 1 against USC where they didn't convert, and a play earlier in that drive where they lost 5 or 6 yards. I think those two plays alone have defined the LSU run game as some mysterious thing that is just not possible. I don't think people remember LSU almost had 150 yards rushing against USC. Like they completely forget about all the successful runs. They only remember the negative ones, which is how our brains are entrained to think. But LSU's offensive line is the strength of this football team. And I think the ultimate competition this weekend you're going to see with LSU's offensive line and South Carolina's defensive line is going to be absolutely unreal of a matchup. And I think it's going to be where the game is won and lost.
I would agree. And I agree to your point that I don't think, LSU, they haven't ran it as effectively as I think we'd like to see, but they can run the football. I don't think it's we're going to go throughout this entire season and LSU just in the 2024 campaign was not physical, like you said, and couldn't run the ball. I think the biggest thing they need to do, especially on Saturday, if I'm LSU, loosen up the defense because they're going to stack the box. They're going to dare Garrett Nussmeier to beat them. You're stretching the field vertically, going to Kyron Lacey, going to C.J. Daniels, going to Xavion Thomas, going to that array of weapons, Mason Taylor down the seam at the tight end spot. You're going to be able to loosen up that defense, get some guys out of the box, and then you're going to open up some running lanes for Caleb Jackson, for Josh Williams, et cetera. So I think LSU's capable of running the football. It wouldn't make sense, Michael, to your point, that they couldn't do so. Now, they haven't, again, done it as effectively as you would like to see through 2 weeks. I mean, the Nicholls State game, they kind of pitched it all over the yard. So I don't draw conclusions from that one necessarily. Losing John Emery in week 1 hurt. It did because he was fantastic, but I still think they've got plenty there. And with that offensive line, you cannot sit there and tell me they're not going to figure it out and get it rolling. Now on the South Carolina side, I think you make them prove it. Like I do think you start out this game loading up the box, and I think they trust their secondary a lot. Nicky Manwari at the safety spot is a real dude. DQ Smith is a former freshman All-American. I think he needs to be more consistent, but you know what his ceiling is and what he's capable of. Their corners, that's the interesting test, I think. Jelon Kilgore back there as well is a really good player who will serve a lot in the nickel, but their corner spot specifically, they did pretty well against Kentucky. I mean, they lived in the backfield, but this is a different challenge. This is the best offense I think South Carolina has faced. And so they're going to have to hold their own because I would just be stunned if we don't see LSU, Michael, try to stretch the field vertically and loosen up the defense. I think that's what they're going to do. Come out guns a-blazing. Kind of like we saw early in that USC game where Kyron Lacey was the focus. And I don't know why LSU went away from that. I'm sure many LSU fans obviously were asking the same thing. So if you want to get into a street fight with the Tigers, I think you'd be careful what you're wishing for because they've got the bodies up front. Maybe it hasn't clicked yet. Maybe it doesn't click this week, but I'd be really surprised if we get to, say, the midway point of the season and we're still having this conversation.
Yeah, and I also think the factor of South Carolina coming in as high as they are and LSU coming in as people are viewing them very inconsistent and then obviously coming off of a loss and struggling they see struggling against Nichols and a loss and you automatically think, well, LSU's probably not that good this year. But I really think after listening to Brian Kelly talk in his press conference that the team is hearing that. And I think that the roles have almost reversed. I'm not going to sit here and say that South Carolina is going to be a favorite in the game because they're a touchdown underdog. There's no doubt in my mind that LSU should be favored to win this game by, and I think the line is on the money. But the narrative coming into this football game, you can't sit here and tell me that South Carolina hosting game day, coming off a dominant, I don't care who you beat in the SEC besides Vanderbilt last couple years, not this year though. Respect to the Commodores out there, fans, if you're watching. All right. But anytime you go into a road environment in the SEC and dominate a team like South Carolina did, it gets people's attention, man. And I think the roles have reversed here. I think LSU's coming into this game and people are, I think, doubting how good of a football team they are. And I'm really hoping that's how the Gamecocks approach this football game for my sake, because I know how good this football team can be. And I know how South Carolina has handled these types of situations in the past where they're trying to make their mark and they're trying to make that next step and be considered one of those teams who can not necessarily contend for the SEC, but be in that next tier, which is, I think, what South Carolina fans want to be considered as.
It's a huge moment for both of these programs, Michael, for different reasons. For the LSU side, I did not expect to hear people say that this was maybe the most important game of Brian Kelly's tenure in Baton Rouge. I'm like, man, he's had some pretty big games. But when you think about being in year three, BK said, hey, judge me off year three. You're backed into a corner, right? You lost that season opener. You can't afford another one, right? You only get two probably to get in the college football playoff, and you've still got Ole Miss and Alabama, and you got to go to Kyle Field and the rest of your SEC schedule. So you lose this one, you'll have to literally be perfect all the way throughout. I mean, it's a massive, massive game. And then for Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks, there was a lot of talk, Michael, over the course of this offseason. Is the seat warming up? Is the seat hot in Columbia? What's the future like after going 5-7? You look at the schedule. How many games are they going to be an underdog in? What if they go 5-7 again? Will he survive to 2025? And I think you've put most of that to bed after the Kentucky game, and like you said, the way you want it. But you win this one, and you start 3-0 on this season, and you got Akron the following week, and you can get to 4-0, and you can be 4-0 when Ole Miss comes to town. And I mean, you're already way ahead of schedule at that point. You're going to be playing with house money essentially the entire season. Now, I'll tell you this, Michael, you made a great point. If you gave any South Carolina fan out there truth serum, they would tell you they're scared shitless in this game. Because when South Carolina's doubted, like they were going into last week, nobody picked them to beat Kentucky, it felt like. That felt like people were calling it the shocker in the SEC last week. Going into a game like that, that's typically where South Carolina thrives. And I'm not saying this to be negative. I'm just, again, give any Gamecock fan truth serum, and they will tell you in the bottom of their heart they feel this. It's situations like this, Michael, where now all of a sudden the spotlight's on and everybody's got expectations of you. And like you said, everybody's kind of favoring the home dog. And this is when South Carolina a lot of times has come out and pissed down their leg. And I'm just fascinated to see, is this team ready, South Carolina, to grasp the moment, right? Take the bull by the horns, kick down the door, if you will, and Shane Beamer kind of launch his tenure, right? He was successful early on. He had a major bump in the road in year three. I think this would kind of feel like a launching point in regards to trajectory. Or is it LSU that comes in, puts their foot down, year three of Brian Kelly, feels like a must win, feels like they have to have it, puts their best game together to this point and comes out and goes into a hostile environment, Michael, and makes a statement. So either way, I see why Gameday came to this game. Their storylines abound. Either it's going to be this upstart surprise South Carolina program, or it's going to be LSU getting off the schneid and kind of sort of, jump starting year three of the Brian Kelly era. Really, really important year for him in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of tell you my feelings about this game, and then we're going to jump into the South Carolina side of things because I definitely want to get there and talk about some of the stars and young stars that they have on that football team. But I look at this game, right? And it's like a boxing match, man. Like you have got the attention of the other fighter now. Like South Carolina landed a nice blow in the first round, and you kind of woke up, and the narrative has, like I said, it's kind of flipped. Like all the LSU offensive lines heard about this week is, hey, they're top 10, they lead the SEC in sacks. They're top 10 in defense, man. Did you see what they did to that Kentucky front? Like it was unreal, and they've heard all that. And I really, like I said, I really think that things are trending in a way to, like you said, where now the expectations not necessarily on South Carolina, but there's a lot more weight on your shoulder than there was 5 days ago going into that Kentucky game. But to break down South Carolina, I think it all starts with Lenora Sellers. Like the kid, I watched him growing up, being from South Carolina. I watched this kid in high school. Dude is a baller. Like there is no undoubtedly like that kid has the talent to play in this league. But everything you've heard out of camp and everything you've seen to this point in the season, is he's inconsistent. Like he's going to make those wow plays that make you go like, wow, he's going to be a really good player. And then he makes the mistakes where you're like, hey, like, how do you not see that guy coming off the edge right into your face? And then, the next play, the same exact thing happens and boom, he makes a man miss and throws a 40-yard touchdown pass. And you're like, okay, you see it now. So I think this game really starts with getting in Lenora Sellers' head as Blake Baker being a great defensive coordinator, scheming things up to get him frustrated because I think when you have that expectation that South Carolina has now with this football game, I think the pressure starts mounting. And if you can get South Carolina in a hole where they're forced to throw the ball and extend plays down the field, I think that starts to benefit you. If they keep this game on the ground and keep it a four-quarter football game and they can just run it whenever they want to, obviously losing Jacoby and Guillory this week is a huge loss for LSU, but this South Carolina run game is super dangerous. Like people don't understand, like Rocket Sanders is there. Like they have good running backs, and then you have to account for the quarterback who, my God, he looks like Cam Newton. The kid is what, 6'5", 230? Like, I mean, the kid is a true, like not a true freshman, but a redshirt freshman, and he looks the part. And let's just say that. So give me your thoughts on Lenora Sellers and what this season has been so far for in your eyes.
Yeah, the ceiling is really high to your point. He's been a little erratic as a young quarterback. A lot of young quarterbacks will be. To your point, he's kind of when you create a player in EA College Football 25, it's kind of he's the prototype, right? I mean, just big, physical, agile, got a rocket for an arm. But again, he's got to be more consistent. And you saw some of those mistakes against Kentucky. They were able to get away. There were explosive plays and there were mistakes, right? And again, to your point, the upside is really high with this kid. The ceiling, I mean, it's as high as any young quarterback in the conference, but it's all about raising the floor when it comes to these QBs, man. That's what I'm more concerned with anything is just raising the floor. To your point, we're asking the question, can LSU run the football? I'm asking, can South Carolina run the football? I mean, that's a huge piece of this. I mean, the matchup between South Carolina's offense and LSU's defense, Michael, that's the one that fascinates me. That is the one that fascinates me because I feel like I know on the other side. A crazy stat I saw this week: Kentucky had 22 dropbacks in that game a couple of days ago. South Carolina sent some form of pressure on 20 of those 22 dropbacks. So they're going to be aggressive. They're going to come after Garrett Nussmeier. They're going to come after that offensive line. They're going to force the issue. I fully expect South Carolina defensively to force the issue, to play into the hands of the home crowd, try to force an early turnover or two, and make Garrett Nussmeier make those throws downfield and beat them, right? We're asking, can they run the football? I think South Carolina is going to make it a point to stack the box, be aggressive up front, and again, force Garrett Nussmeier to push the ball vertically. But on the other side, I feel like this is going to be a launching point for one of these two units, the South Carolina offense or the LSU defense. Either we're going to see South Carolina offensively get the running game going. This is going to be that breakout game for Rocket Sanders and Oscar Attaway and Lenora Sellers in the running game. Because this offense is with the personnel, they're built to run the football. This is not a pass-happy offense. I just don't think they have the personnel in place to do that. So it's either going to be a breakout day for them on the ground or for LSU defensively, who looked way, way better in week one. I know week two was a little bit sloppy against Nichols, but again, I don't put a lot of stock in that. But if Blake Baker's defense, who I expect to be aggressive, obviously, it's going to be two aggressive defenses. If Blake Baker's defense can come out, if they can shut down South Carolina, stymie that run game, and force Lenora Sellers to throw in, like you said, kid can make big plays, but it's also very, very erratic, can get a little bit turnover happy, and they can force the issue and get the ball off of South Carolina. I think it could serve as a huge launching point for Blake Baker's defense and, serve as a momentum, a spark, if you will, for that side of the football. So that is the matchup that really intrigues me more than any, Michael. It's that South Carolina offense against the LSU defense, because in my opinion, something's got to give, and I don't quite know what it is, to be totally honest with you.
I got you. Yeah. So getting straight to the point, man, we're running out of time here, man. I gotta know. I got my prediction in. All right. I got LSU winning this football game. I think I look at this game similar to how I looked at last year's game against Mississippi State to that third game of the year, first SEC game. LSU comes off of a horrific opener. We've seen this trend, unfortunately, 5 years in a row. You play McNeese, that game is what it is. And then you come out and nobody knows what to expect against Mississippi State last year, right? Are they going to be good? Are they going to be bad? Are we going to lose to Mississippi State? Are we going to go 6-6? I think LSU fans are notorious for pushing the panic button way too early. But I got LSU winning this football game 31-20. I do think it's a lower scoring game early in this game. I think the South Carolina offense just doesn't do enough for me here to initially keep up. I think it plays out almost similar to how the USC game went, where you see a close game. But I think this time LSU has been preaching. They have got to finish these football games, and I think they get that late touchdown, late field goal to go up 2 scores late in the game and put that pressure on that South Carolina offense. And that is going to be the difference in the game. So I got LSU winning 31-20.
So, Michael, a few days ago, we previewed this game, and I locked in my prediction, and I said 27-20 LSU, right on the number. And I don't want to be that guy who's just picking the Vegas spread, right? But as the week has gone on, deep diving into this matchup, talking to LSU people, talking to South Carolina people, I'm going to adjust my prediction ever so slightly. I'm still going LSU, but I'm going to go LSU 30-17. I just, to your point, man, I think what South Carolina did at Kentucky was really, really impressive. But this is a much better offense I think they're facing. I mean, Kentucky's got some real issues on the offensive side of the football. They've got the offensive line that can go toe-to-toe with that South Carolina pass rush. And, Michael, I talked about it. I love the matchup with LSU's wide receivers against South Carolina's corners. I think if I'm LSU, and I would expect them to do this, they're going to try to push the football downfield. They're trying to try to push it to Kyron Lacey early, loosen up that defense a little bit. I think, to your point, the LSU offensive line has been hearing all week long about how they can't get a run push, they can't run the football, and I think we're going to see LSU do that. I think we're going to see LSU establish a ground game. I think Garrett Nussmeier, those LSU receivers, you see some explosives in the passing game, and I think it's a close competitive game too. I just don't think South Carolina has the offense right now to keep up. I'm not going to call the Kentucky game smoke and mirrors. It wasn't that. But you're going to have to put together some drives and be competent on the offensive side. And I just don't trust right now with a young quarterback in Lenora Sellers, with an offensive line that I still think is probably pretty inconsistent. I just don't think you're going to get enough of that. And I don't trust that South Carolina will not be one-dimensional, Michael. Maz Bennett at the wide receiver positions come along well, but I just don't trust that they're going to be good enough offensively. So I'm going to go LSU. I'm going to adjust my score prediction a little bit. I'll go LSU 30-17 in this game. And lastly, because I know we're running low on time, Michael, I've seen this movie before. I've seen this script play out with South Carolina in big games. And my friend, the ship sinks more often than not. So South Carolina's on a big stage. They have the opportunity to go out there and make a statement, but I think it'll be LSU making the statement on Saturday.
Yeah, Chris, man, I hope you're right. Like I said, I think this is a statement game for LSU just as much as it is for South Carolina. And I think LSU is going to answer the bell. No doubt. Man, it was so good talking to you, Chris. Man, if you guys haven't already, like I said, you have got to check out SEC Unfiltered. How many days a week are we previewing games? It's pretty much 7 days a week,
Every day is
24/7. This dude is grinding out here. So you guys got to check out, follow him on all the socials. You see him on SEC Unfiltered on X, probably Instagram and YouTube. So make sure you guys go check it out, and I will see you guys next time.